Hello, beautiful soul sister, and welcome back to another episode of the Soul Powered Podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Kiger. I'm a trauma-informed master mindset and money coach, as well as a financial expert of over 17 years. I have spent my entire adult life studying the difference between successful and unsuccessful people, and I plan on sharing all of the things with you on this journey together. This podcast is called the Soul Powered Podcast because it's my desire to share with you how to create a life that is powered by your soul, not by societal standards or what everyone else in your life tells you that you should be doing, but actually powered by your soul. The reason you'd want to do this is because I believe that this is the fastest way to unlock your portal to prosperity and become what I call the wildly wealthy woman. This is the portal that once you enter it, you gain access to the prosperity, abundance, wealth, time freedom, experiences, fulfillment that are your birthright. I don't believe that you came here to build someone else's dreams. I believe you came here to live your soul-powered life and live it to the fullest. And I plan on sharing with you exactly how to do that during our time together. So thank you so much for being here. I know we're going to have so much fun together today. Let's dive in. Hello, my love, and welcome back to the Soul Powered Podcast. We are diving into a more vulnerable and personal topic today that's going to help you to see that you are not alone. My entire purpose of today's episode is really to shine some light on the fact that I really think in this day and age, we just believe that people who have it all together, quote unquote, like that they don't struggle. People who make a lot of money don't struggle. People who are on this healing journey don't struggle. Manifestation experts, money coaches, financial advisors, therapists, like all of these people, they just have it all together. And they're not human, like they don't, they don't have the same kind of emotional struggles as the rest of us. And that just could not be further from the truth. And today's conversation is really going to be around showing you that it's okay to be messy on your way to mastery, that you are on this journey because you're not average. Like you're listening to this podcast because you're not average. You're listening to this podcast because you want to live a soul-powered life. Otherwise, you wouldn't be listening to the soul-powered podcast. So what that tells me about you, even if we haven't met yet, and even if we don't know each other, what that tells me about you is that you know what it's like to go against the grain. You know what it's like to move left when everyone else is moving right. You know what it's like to have people call you the black sheep, to have people tell you that you're different and that you're going in a direction that possibly is not the right direction for you. And you've probably had people your whole life make you feel like you are different. And you probably felt different. You probably felt like you don't belong, you don't fit in, all of the things. And I just want you to know that I deeply, deeply understand this. And to be 100% honest, I have struggled with all of those things myself, and I still struggle with some of those today. And that's why I wanted to record this specific episode so that you could see that I'm here. You're listening to this podcast because you want to come and learn from me and you want to hang out with me and you like my vibe or whatever the energy is. I hear different feedback from you guys as to what brings you here. But the point is that you're here and there's something here for you. There's a reason that you tune in each and every week. And truthfully, I want to be just fully transparent with you about the fact that yes, I'm here doing the things. Yes, I'm here taking the action. Yes, I'm here making the money. Yes, I'm here doing what I love for a living. And I still struggle deeply. I still struggle deeply. And I really feel like if there were more people talking about how difficult this journey of living a soul-powered life in a society that is literally conditioning us day by day, moment by moment, to fit in with everyone else. If anyone realized how difficult that was before we signed up for the journey, maybe we wouldn't do it. And that's why I want to bring light to this. Use my vulnerability, use my mistakes, use my trauma responses, use my situations as evidence that you can overcome things and still show up in your purpose. You can struggle and still show up in your purpose. You can feel like you're not making any progress, or like you're an imposter, or like you're a failure, or like why would anybody want to listen to you? And you can still show up. Like you can feel all of those things. And I think one of the main reasons that I want to talk about this is because number one, I don't see many people talking about it. I see a lot of people living in this place of, especially coaches and manifestation experts and money coaches and therapists. Like there's so many people who they're educating people online, right? Like that's what we do. We educate people and we showcase our lives. But there's not as many people who are telling the actual truth about what's going on behind the scenes, and the fact that they're actually burned out and they're exhausted and they're feeling unfulfilled and their business feels like it's hanging on by a thread. And the reason that I know this is because, especially being in the masterminds that I've been in through the years, I've been in many, many high level masterminds with, multiple six, multiple seven, multiple eight-figure entrepreneurs. And I can tell you that all of the things that I just described are real even in those scenarios. There are multiple seven-figure business owners who feel like their businesses are holding on by a fucking thread, that they don't feel like they're worthy of success, that it's all going to come crashing down, that it doesn't, you know, like that they shouldn't be struggling with the things that they're struggling with still. And it makes them feel even more like an imposter because, and this is exactly how I feel from time to time as well, because I'll tell myself the story of I should have this figured out by now. I should be, and we hold ourselves to like this ridiculous standard of if I want to help people, I should be perfect. I should never have a negative thought. I should never have an outburst. I should never be triggered again. I should never say anything negative. I shouldn't be human if I want to help other people to overcome these things. And I don't know where this narrative comes from. I don't know if it's our perfectionist, tendencies from childhood. I really don't know where this comes from. But it's time that we start talking about it. And usually, like, I share these things from kind of I had a mentor say once that, especially as you're sharing your life online and all of the things, that wait until, the wound that you're sharing is like at least has a scab. It's starting to heal before sharing it. Because, you see a lot of people who they go to like Facebook and cry, and I have a lot of compassion for people, because maybe that person who's on Facebook crying for attention doesn't have anyone else. You know what I mean? So like I do understand the psychology behind why people would do that. But especially as someone who's in a authoritative role, an expert role, a coach role, that's not always viewed well. And it's really not something, that's not my vibe as it is anyway. But I still can see where there's value in sharing the vulnerability. Just because I don't pick up my phone and start crying to you on Instagram about something that I'm struggling with yesterday doesn't mean that I can't come on here today and say, "Hey, I'm through this. I worked through it, and here's what I struggled with." And this is me. This is fully transparently me, and I still have a successful life, and I still woke up today and got to do what I wanted to do, created my own schedule. I had 20 grand hit my account yesterday was while I was crying in bed. So this is the thing, is that I really want to speak to this misconception that's in our manifestation community, that's in the mindset community, that you have to have high vibes only. You've got to be high vibes all the time in order to make more money, or, even this conversation of dominant frequency and dominant vibration, that you have to be in this high vibrational space in order to manifest the things that you want. And I'm just here to tell you, as someone who has worked through an immense amount of trauma, that you don't have to have it all together in order to be successful. As a matter of fact, people really do resonate a lot more with the humanity of you. The fact that you struggle, the fact that you have quirks, the fact that you're goofy, the fact that this toe is weird, oddly shaped. You know what I mean? Like, okay, I don't know if you're like, unless you're selling feet pics, maybe not showing your toes online, but you get my point. Like, the things that we do that are unique to us even if we don't like them, even if we feel like they're quirks, those are actually the things that people resonate the most with. A lot of people tell me that my laugh or my giggle is like one of their favorite things about me. And I never really even like I was like, what? Like that's just my laugh. That's just how I do things, right? And I can't force it right now. Maybe I'll laugh at some point throughout. But it's like I have heard that from time to time to time to time again. And like I used to hate my voice. I always thought that I sounded like a guy, like when I was a kid and stuff. Like I always thought I had a really deep voice and I didn't like it. And then as I started my podcast, as I started my coaching business, as I started speaking more publicly, people would come to me and tell me these things about my voice. And I'm like, that's really interesting because I never thought of that. I never thought that that was cute. I never thought that that was anything out of the ordinary at all. My clients inside of the Align Money program and my various, containers that I'm working with clients in tell me often that when they're having a stressed out day or, they're needing to come back to their center, they want to come back to alignment, that they'll just put on one of the trainings inside of the program or they'll do one of the meditations. I have a whole meditate to elevate series inside of the program where, you can just plug into any of those meditations and they're guided meditations, of course, to help you move through blocks or to help you calm down or whatever it is. It's a whole series. But I've had people tell me that, just putting my voice on their phone or, starting to listen to me, putting on my podcast, it calms them down. And I'm like, oh, okay. Right. So there's these weird like things that we don't even necessarily like about ourselves that people end up wanting to learn from and wanting to hear from us. But I digress a little bit. So the very point of this episode is just to be fully transparent about the fact that I still have struggles. And I promise you, in the containers that I'm in, with again, very, very high level entrepreneurs, we all still have struggles. And so, in the sense of transparency, let's talk about it. Let's talk about what those struggles look like and how the nervous system works, okay? Because I think again, just to bring some light to the fact that even though you're on this journey, even though you're healing, even though you are moving to your next level and you're moving into a new timeline and a new paradigm where you have all the things that you want, it doesn't mean that all of your problems are going to go away overnight. Now, do problems get easier when you have finances, like financial ability to pay for things? Yes, they do. Life becomes easier when you have money. I'm not going to sit here and say that that's not the case. I've been on both sides of the spectrum, okay? So, not having any money, the only thing I'm focused on in that environment when, again, this is probably a decade ago or so was the last time that I really experienced like maybe even longer than that, like true survival mode. But I know what that's like. And the only possible thing that I was concerned about during those times is making more money and putting food on the table for my kid. So, yes, life becomes a lot easier when you have more money, when you have more overflow, when you have flexibility, when you have more time freedom. All of those things are true. And you still get to be human. You still get to be human. So the way that this works and the way that the nervous system works, just to kind of set up the story of what happened yesterday, that kind of caused me to just break down and have a pity party for myself and all of the things. I look at healing kind of like this, and there's a lot of research that backs this and supports this, but let me put it in my own language so you can understand. So if you're watching me on the recording, or I'm sorry, the whatever on Spotify. I guess you can see me on Spotify here. I don't think Apple has the videos yet, but if you're watching me, you will see that I have a turquoise sweater on today. Because if you didn't listen to the color therapy session, discover the meaning behind like soul colors a couple episodes ago with Marsha O'Regan, you should definitely listen to it. She told me that I'm a turquoise soul. The color of like my soul is turquoise or something. I don't fully understand all of it. I need to go back and like I did re-listen to it, but I need to listen again. And I actually want to work with Marsha in some capacity because she's incredible and she like knew a lot about me just based on the color of my soul. But anyway, she told me to start using more turquoise, and so here we are. Okay, I digress. So let's go back. So if you're watching me on the video, then you can see what I'm saying. And if not, you can just kind of imagine this in your brain. So I believe that healing is like this. There was a period of my life where 100% of the time, I was in fear, scarcity, and survival mode. Okay. Now, that wasn't like when I was born. Obviously, that was after like conditioning and things and all of the trauma from childhood. And so, about 100% of the time, I mean, I genuinely, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I didn't know what it was like to fully rest and relax. I genuinely didn't know what it was like fully disconnect and fully be at peace. I've rested, quote unquote, but it was kind of more of that active resting where, when you're sitting on the couch and instead of actually just being present with the movie that you're watching or your kids or your spouse or yourself, you're thinking about all of the things that you need to be doing and all of the things that you should be doing. And you're actually like kind of punishing yourself and shaming yourself for resting. Like that's the kind of rest that I took. And that's not real rest, right? That's indication that your nervous system is still in fight or flight, even when you're slowing down. So 100% of the time, for most of my adulthood, I was living in survival mode. And I was in a state of fight or flight. And then from time to time, pretty often, as a matter of fact, my nervous system would go into shutdown. So the way that this works from a nervous system perspective is that when you're in survival mode, typically your fight or flight response activates first. And so this dates back to survival times. Our brain has not evolved beyond tribal times. I'm sorry, not survival times. I guess they're one and the same because you did just kind of have to focus on surviving. But like going back to tribal times, let's say, for instance, that you were living in tents and you were living in tribes and you walked outside of your tent and then you saw a bear or a wolf or someone who did not look like your people, right? Immediately, what would happen is you would go into a state of fight or flight to go and fight that threat off or run away from it. Now, what happens is our nervous systems, especially in this day and age, with all of the shit that we have going on, okay? The fact that we are working, even, as women, right? We haven't always been allowed to work, I mean, realistically. So we're now working, we're mothers, we're supposed to be the cooks, the cleaners, the cleaning ladies. We're supposed to be entrepreneurs and go out and live our best, most, independent lives. We're also supposed to be the best wife, the best mother, the best sibling, the best daughter, the best entrepreneur, the best this, the best that, right? We have like a million different hats that we need to wear. And social media is a thing. Now we're comparing ourselves to everyone else. We are in this constant place of being told that we don't live up, right? We're not meeting the expectations of this arbitrary societal blueprint that is placed upon our lives unknowingly and undesirably. Okay. So we more now than ever as a society are living in chronic places of stress. So from a physiological perspective, here's what actually is happening. When your body goes into fight or flight, all of the energy that is intended to be used to rest and digest, so to heal, okay, all of that healing energy is rushing then to your extremities. And in this, going back to tribal times, right? When you see that bear, when you see that wolf, it's rushing to your extremities so you can flee or fight off the threat. Now, here's the thing that's interesting about the nervous system is that the nervous system does not know the difference between a real or a perceived threat. And so all of these perceived threats that I just mentioned earlier, if you're working a job and your boss is constantly nagging at you, or you have children, you are fighting with your spouse, or you've got business stress, financial stress, all of these other types of stress, the way the body internalizes them is as though you are standing there outside of your tent seeing a bear that's about to attack you. And so when we talk about chronic stress, that means that chronically, like on a day-to-day basis, all of the healing energy that's intended to literally heal your body, to rest, to allow you to restore yourself, to regenerate your cells, to digest your food, all of that energy is being sent to your extremities, and you are on edge all of the time. Now, all pretty much animals or mammals at least go into a state of fight or flight, but we're supposed to come right back down as soon as we assess the fact that there isn't a threat. So I see this with deer outside of our house all the time. It's like they'll hear a noise, they get nervous, their tail goes up, they kind of like, okay, they're on high alert for a moment. Tail goes back down when they realize that there's no threat, and then they keep eating or keep doing what they're doing. We don't do that as a society. No one teaches us how to decompress and bring ourselves out of these situations. And so, for most of us, we're living in a place of chronic stress. So, the main thing that I've been working on over the last probably 7 or 8 years is really learning how to bring myself out of that state. This is why they say that stress is the number one killer of or cause of disease. It's the number one root cause of disease in the United States. Why? Because we're constantly stressed. So if we're constantly stressed, how the fuck is our body going to heal itself? It's not. It's literally not. Your body's not going to heal itself whenever you're in a constant state of stress because all of that energy that's supposed to be used for healing, for resting, digesting, for regenerating your cells, they're all of that is being used up and burned up to fight or flee the perceived threat that you have in your life right now. But because your body doesn't know the difference. So what ends up happening is, so that's how I live the majority of my life. And this can cause all kinds of health issues. That's why we see, more and more people coming out and talking about this, even in the medical field. So 100% of my life, fight or flight. And then what ends up happening is eventually there's so much energy that's gone to your extremities. There's so much energy of fight or flight that your body's like, holy crap, this is too big of a threat. I cannot withstand this. I can't fight this off, and I'm not strong enough or fast enough to run away from it. So now I'm going to shut down and I'm going to play dead. Okay. So what's actually happening is if we walk out of our tent, okay, back in tribal times, let's imagine that we're there. We walk out, we see a threat that is far too big. Our body shuts down, it plays dead, and it goes into a freeze response. Okay. So this is your dorsal vagal nervous system being activated. Now, the real reason that that actually happens, it's kind of morbid, is that your body is shutting down, it's freezing, it's numbing, so you don't feel yourself essentially being eaten alive. So that very same energy is exactly what happens when you allow yourself to get overwhelmed, when you allow all of this fight or flight energy, when you don't use your nervous system tools, when you don't bring yourself down from a place of activation, your body starts to literally shut down and you go into these more depressive episodes. You're not being eaten alive anymore, right? But you feel like you are in a way, or you feel like you don't have. So what ends up happening when you're in that shutdown state is kind of like that's what feels more of like a depression or a depressive episode. It's like I don't want to move. I don't want to get out of my bed. The things that used to make me happy don't. I don't really want to go hang out with people. I'm overwhelmed to the point where I literally cannot do anything right now. I don't have the energy to respond to text messages. I don't have the energy to reply to anyone. I don't have the energy. I definitely don't have the energy to think about my business or to be in my creative energy. Like none of that exists. It's all gone in these states. Okay. So the reason I'm talking about all of this is because we can find ourselves very easily in a shutdown space if we don't look at the warning signals that are leading us up into that place and use our nervous system tools to bring us down. Does that make sense? So going back to my healing journey and the way that it works. So I used to spend 100% of my time in fight, flight, freeze, or shutdown. Okay. Then what happens is when you start your journey, you start learning these tools and you learning these techniques, it's kind of like muscle memory. Okay. It might go from 5% of the time I'm in, regulation, I'm in my ventral vagal safety state, and 95% of the time I'm still in fear and survival. But the more I use my tools, it goes from, 5% to 10%, to 10% to 20% in, regulation, right? 20% to 30%, then 40%, then 50%, right? And then what ends up happening, which is really, really cool, is once you reach the 50% of the time you're in safety and 50% of the time you're in survival, the more that you do this work, the more that you end up tipping over to that dominant vibration of safety. And that is really what determines the dominant vibration of what you're putting out there into the universe and it's going to determine what you get back. That's kind of why there is a lag time usually between when people start this healing journey and actually start to live the life that they want. Let me give you an example. So this works with money, right? We talk a lot about money. So as it relates to money, you may have started where I did, where I was like 100% in fear and scarcity around money. But then I started using my tools and eventually I got to abundance and overflow being my dominant vibration. So now that my dominant vibration is that of abundance, my nature now is to receive good things and to receive an overflow and to have more than enough. That's like my energetic standard, if you will, now. But it didn't change overnight. It took time. It took reprogramming. It took me expanding my nervous system's capacity to receive more good things because my standard 10, 15, 20 years ago was like very low. Okay. If my bank account wasn't negative, I was happy. Okay. So it just shows you like the difference. So the reason that I bring all of this up is because I don't really believe, and maybe this is a limiting belief that I need to work through. Maybe it happens, but because we're human, I haven't seen anyone, and I'm talking anyone, even the people who are making tens of millions of dollars a year, I haven't seen anyone be in 100% safety, security, overflow, and abundance all of the time. I just haven't seen it. So like you get to this dominant vibration and I feel like at this stage of my life, I'm probably 90-10, meaning 90% of the time I'm in safety. I'm in my ventral vagal, which is my safety zone within the nervous system. I'm in abundance. I'm in overflow. I'm happy. I'm joyous. I'm at ease. I'm in freedom, all of that. But I still have about 5 to 10% of the time that I get triggered, that things happen. Okay. So this 5% of the time, this 5 to 10% of the time that I'm still in this survival energy, there's a couple things to note about this. Number one, I notice it now in my body, whereas before I always tell people like I used to be like a walking panic attack. Like I didn't know what safety felt like in my body. So I was always activated, always. I always was on edge. I was always defensive. I was always afraid. Like loud noises would be, I mean, it would like, and I watched this in some of my siblings and definitely like my parents and whatnot as well where loud noises, if you have these overreactive tendencies when something occurs, that's a really good indicator that there's nervous system dysregulation. So like if a loud noise, somebody would slam a door, I'm like, and it's like like my body's like so afraid of every little thing because, there were a lot of reasons that happened in my childhood. Like there were a lot of reasons for me to be afraid and consistently on edge. So the body keeps score. We remember these things. But now I can feel it because my baseline is homeostasis. My baseline is abundance. My baseline is ease. So now I can feel the energy kind of rising in my body whenever it begins to happen. Sometimes, though, it's difficult for me to know, for me to catch it. And this is why I want to bring this up because even as someone who has like rigid, like absolutely rigid processes and structures around this stuff, and I have my morning routine and I've got, I know this stuff and I do this stuff for a living, I still sometimes get out of practice with it. I'm looking right over on my credenza over here, and I have Rebecca's Rise Ritual List. And it's a list of things, and this is one of the things I help my Aligned Money members create is a list of things that make you feel abundant, that make you feel good and at peace. And these are things that not only am I supposed to be incorporating daily or weekly, but when I feel myself getting activated, that's a trigger for me to use those things. And I can tell you that I don't always do that. And I'm realizing how important that every single thing that I've intentionally brought into my life in terms of the space that I give myself, my spiritual practices, my nervous system practices, the breath work sessions, the time to myself, the journaling, the meditating, like when I have these situations that come up where I am in shutdown, it makes me realize how important it is to continuously do those things, even when things feel good, because I can look back. So yesterday came along and I, there were some things that had been stewing for a while, probably honestly probably since we had to put our dog down. So for those of you guys who listened to the last episode, I talked about us having to make this really hard and I mean, it was one of the hardest decisions that we've ever had to make. Like, I don't feel like that's something that we are even supposed to be able to make, is when any sentient being's life ends. Like, they're like on a moral and soul level, that decision to have to put my dog down was so much harder than I thought it was going to be. And so I think maybe that's where things started to shift. So that was what, like, call it 2 weeks ago at this point. It's about 2 weeks ago. Yeah, it's actually exactly 2 weeks ago today. Okay. So 2 weeks ago, we had to make that decision. And then we went straight into a cruise, a 9-day cruise with me and my daughter and my husband, who I love more than anything. But we're in close quarters with each other for 9 days, and it's a lot. And you're dealing with, flight plans and itineraries and not a lot of sleep and, just overstimulation to the max. Okay. A cruise specifically, it was like a lot of overstimulation because there's a lot of people in this one place and we all want to be at the same spots and we all want to be doing the same things. And then we all got to get off the ship at this time and get back on the ship at this time. And it was a lot. And looking back, like I enjoyed every second of it. It was so fun and it was a great experience. And I loved doing the cruise. But looking back on my nervous system's perspective, I don't think that I gave myself everything that I needed while I was there, especially because for me, the way my routine is set up every day now is I get up at 6 o'clock and I come out into my office, which is beautifully designed, by the way. It's everything that I want it to be. It's a very sacred spiritual spot for me, a space for me. You can see a little bit behind me of like the vibe and the energy in the room, in the space. And I come out here and I put on my binaural beats and I put on some high vibe music. And then, I open my day with meditation and cleansing and journaling and tapping into my higher self and all of these incredible practices. And then I go downstairs and I either walk on the treadmill, I do a workout in my home gym, or I go to the actual gym. I have typically minimum 3 to 4 hours a day of alone time before I even think about speaking to another human. And that's really important to me. That time is really important for me to get myself where I need to be for the day. And it helps me to I'm a hermit by nature with my human design is a 6-2 pure generator. So, you know, I like to hermit, I like to be alone. And the way that my nervous system is set up, it's very helpful for me to do that and to give myself that space. So naturally, when me and my daughter and my husband are in a room on the cruise together, which if you've ever been on a cruise, like we even upgraded the room and got like a bigger room, and there's still not that, I mean, it's still not your house, you know what I mean? Like the cruise only has so much space. The ship only has so much space. So, you know, I'm waking up to my husband, and he's not always the most gentle person, especially like in the mornings, which I love my mornings. My mornings are really important to me. And like the one day the toilet wasn't working. So gross. But they had an issue on the whole floor where the toilet wasn't working. So I literally get woken up to him like all pissed off about this toilet situation. And like I don't, that's hard for me, especially whenever I have such a designed out, curated, incredible morning routine now. Okay, so is it a little bougie? Maybe, but I've designed my life this way, right? So here we are on this cruise. We're together the whole time. And there's also some triggers within my body in terms of when I go on vacation, when I'm in a bathing suit, when I'm putting myself in these scenarios with my history of body dysmorphia and eating disorders and low self-esteem. Sometimes traveling can be a trigger for me. Whereas like day to day, I feel good. I feel great. I love my body. I'm working out. I'm helping, myself heal in a lot of different ways. But when I travel sometimes, especially when there's a lot of people like in bathing suits and whatnot, that's still triggering for me. So there were kind of like these myriad, and then there were things when we got back home and just like I want to go into every single thing because it doesn't really matter. But the point is that there were these myriad of circumstances over the last 2 weeks that I did not properly address within myself. You know how it is too when you get back from a vacation and your whole week is kind of like a little bit behind, you've got things going on, it's just you feel a little bit out of routine. And especially for me, I love routine. I love being in a routine. It's part of my human design. It's also like my neurodivergence speaking. I love a routine. And so as much as I love traveling, it does pull me out of that a little bit. And so experiencing all of this and then not taking the time to do my spiritual practices, to give myself a lot of space, to use my rise rituals. It's also been really, really cold here in Pittsburgh. So I think there is a little seasonal aspect to this as well. We came home from this beautiful cruise where we're all tan and, hot and just got to spend time on these islands and loving life to negative degrees Fahrenheit here. Lana literally started crying when we got to the door. I thought she was crying about the dog because obviously our girl dog wasn't here. And no, she was crying about how cold it was. And, for context as well, as much as like the cost of living is great here and my whole family's here, like I love Pittsburgh for a lot of reasons. We get on average about 70 days of sunshine a year. So that's why we're intentional about traveling a lot as well. And we thought a lot about moving, but it just doesn't feel aligned for me right now. I really do love where we live. And my goal is, because again, I think this is my other tendencies of not enoughness, wanting to move. And then I feel like, oh, well, if I move into like this big mansion in this, place by the beach and I have all this luxury around me, then I'll be able to go and, be happy or create success or whatever it is I think I'm going to get from that. So my goal is actually to build a seven-figure business from this house. Like that would feel really, really, really amazing for me because then it's like, yeah, you don't need all of the things. I don't need all of the external things, right? And that's my next goal. So, all of that to say, I ignored the fact that I knew that I needed to do my spiritual practices. I needed to do some sort of breath work, some sort of grounding. I knew I needed like a couple hours of time to myself for that. That would have been probably enough to avoid the shutdown that occurred yesterday. And it started kind of stemming like what, Saturday morning. I just got really triggered by something that my husband did, which like we don't fight like that. We don't fight anymore. We don't have these kinds of triggers anymore. And this is why I'm being super compassionate with myself because remember, like healing is not always linear. So that 5% of the time that I'm gonna have a reaction, it's easy to want to go into like blaming and shaming myself. Like I should know better than this. I shouldn't even be teaching people how to do this stuff if I am going to react that way. But looking back, it's all like a lesson and a learning opportunity for me because I can see where I went wrong. So, anyways, all of that to say, yesterday I just was completely overwhelmed. And I started working in the morning and then I had a situation with a guy that I hired on Fiverr to help me with some things behind the scenes in my business and he didn't do the project and he ghosted me even after I paid him. So then I had that to deal with first thing in the morning yesterday. And I went on and I just tried to work that out and then I just lost it. I just started crying. I was like, I can't do this. I can't work today. I was like, I'm firing myself for the day. I need to go home and I need to not work and I need to figure out my life. So instead of working, I slept almost all of the day yesterday. Then I had a really honest conversation with my husband about, what happened and why it happened and how to prevent it in the future and all of the things. But yesterday I spent a lot of time in self-pity and just thinking like, I can't believe that I'm still doing these things. I can't believe that I'm having this reaction. I don't know how to bring myself out of it, and I can't believe that I can. And that wasn't even true. My husband's like, you know exactly how to bring yourself out of it. You're just choosing to sit here and pity yourself. And if that's what you want to do, then just be honest about it. And I was like, okay, I'm giving myself this time and I'm taking a nap and I don't want to talk to anyone. I need to figure out my life right now. And it lasted a few hours and then I cried myself to sleep, took a nap, slept for about 3 hours and then woke up. And like I said, talked with my husband about it, cultivated some safety within myself, and made the decision that that's not how I want to do things in the future. And so as a result, I've put into play different I've scheduled in spiritual practices. I've scheduled in my breathwork sessions. I've scheduled things that are red time in my calendar that I do not get to override. That is as important to me as recording this podcast episode. That is as important to me as doing a webinar. That is as important to me as teaching and creating content for my business. Like that is as important to me because if I am not filling my own cup or I'm not doing the things to take care of myself, then those kinds of outbursts are going to happen. Now, here's what I will say is that again, healing works like this, right? It really is something that a situation like that used to throw me into a depressive episode where I would be in for a year at a time. Like literally, I would go year, right? And then it would be 6 months, go from 6 months to 3 months to 1 month to 2 weeks, 2 weeks to 1 week, 1 week to a day down to an hour or a couple hours. So I've gotten myself to a point where I can work through really, really heavy emotions, lack of foresight on my behalf, spirals. I can get myself out of that place within a couple hours now with the tools that I have. But all of the thoughts, I mean, it really felt like you would have picked me up and put me right back into my childhood. I felt so scared. I felt so afraid. I felt so alone. I felt so unsafe. I felt like I just wanted to burn my business to the ground. I just want to quit my job. I just want to, I just want to quit everything. I want to get a divorce. I want to move to Florida. Like the thoughts did not match up with the reaction, right? And that's how you know that it's not a time to make a decision around anything big in those moments. Like those are not the times to make financial decisions. It's not time to make permanent decisions at all whatsoever. If you need to cry yourself to sleep, go cry yourself to sleep. Sleep on it is a term for a reason. Go get a bubble bath, go for a walk, go do yoga, go do whatever the hell it is that you need to do, but bring yourself out of that space and then slowly defrost yourself, okay? Because a freeze response is different than a fight or flight and it needs to be treated as such. So a freeze response is when, again, you're so overloaded by all of that stressful energy that you shut down. And so you kind of got to give yourself a little bit of space to thaw out. And you're not going to just come right back. Like I was like, I'm not working today. Even though I started feeling better in the evening, I was like, I'm giving myself space because I am not in the headspace right now to do this. But today I am. So you can see that just quickly I was able to overcome that. But I did. It sucked. And the whole reason for sharing this is because I want you to know that if you have those experiences, you're not alone. I've been working on this for years. But again, the body keeps the score. So there's clearly a trigger that I needed to address as it related to my childhood, as it related to something that was unhealed. And now I have an action plan where I can move forward and then also support myself a hell of a lot better than I have been over the last 2 weeks. All of this to say that I'm still here and I'm still showing up and I still believe in the value that I have to bring into this world because again, that's something as healing as you are healing, you may have the thoughts of I should be over this by now. I already worked through this block by now. I should have this figured out. I should know what I'm doing by now. I shouldn't be struggling with this. Why am I still struggling with this? Why is this thought coming up? I thought I let go of that limiting belief. All of this stuff is still going to come up, and that doesn't make you wrong. It makes you human. And so as we wind down this plane today, I share all of this in an attempt to let you see that I'm still here doing the thing, even though I felt like I should throw this computer through that window yesterday, not at it, through it, okay, and move and hang everything up and quit my entire life and just give up. That's how I felt yesterday. And I'm glad that I didn't because we're still here, and everything's okay. And I was able to turn it around. It's not without struggles, especially those of us who are overcoming deep levels of trauma. The body keeps a score. Okay. And there will be times where we go back to those periods of unsafety, whether it was in your childhood, whether it was in a recent relationship with someone, those things your body's going to remember. And if you are finding yourself back in those triggered spaces, that is your opportunity, as much as it doesn't feel like it is, to sit with what are you so afraid of? What is happening in the body right now that you feel so afraid and so unsafe? And how can you sit with that part of yourself and try to figure out what's going on so that you can give yourself what it is that that inner child version of you needed at the time? This is the opportunity for you to reparent yourself. And if you need to cry, I'm reading right now the book, I'm listening to the book called, oh my gosh, what's the name of it? The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins, and it's changing my entire life. But one of the things that she talks about in there, which is something I've heard a lot in the psychology industry, is that adults are just like children. We have big emotions, if you have ever seen someone acting out and triggered, they are literally doing the same thing as a toddler, right? Like, it's crazy to think about, but it's because we never learned how to manage our emotions. We didn't learn how to work through those things. I feel big emotions. I am an empath, right? Like I have these experiences where I have these emotions that feel very, very heavy at times. And sometimes it's hard to work through them, but it doesn't make you wrong. It doesn't mean that you're not progressing. Like I said, I woke up from my nap yesterday and went onto my phone after I was up and ready to deal with the world, and I had a notification of a $20,000 payment that was coming in. You don't have to be high vibe. I was crying in my freaking bed. You don't have to be perfect in order to be successful, or in order to help people. You just have to have a willing heart. You have to be willing to do the work, and you have to have something of value to share and to offer the world. And when you have those things, people will respond to it. But you don't have to be perfect. And if you keep waiting until you're perfect, if you keep waiting until you don't have any limiting beliefs anymore, your nervous system's fully feeling safe, like you're going to be like one of those memes that you see of like the skeleton sitting on the bench, and it's like waiting for, waiting to be perfect before I launch that offer, waiting to be perfect before I start the business, waiting for to be perfect before I quit my job. You're going to be waiting forever. None of those external things are going to do it. They're not going to provide you fulfillment. They're not going to make you feel safe. That's an internal job, and it takes work. And especially for those of us who've been through a lot, it's just going to take you a little bit more work. You know what? I'll tell you 1000% though, it is worth it. I'd rather be here 1,000 times out of 1,000 than where I was a decade ago. And I want the same for you. I want the same for you. So if you need support with this, of course, stay tuned, stay in touch. Shoot me a DM. Let me know what resonated with you the most about this episode. I love hearing from you guys. And check out the links below because I have a workshop that is coming up on the 5-step proven process to expand your nervous system's capacity to receive good things and actually hold on to them. Because in past times, I would have self-sabotaged in an event like that. I would have made a big decision that I would have regretted. And I didn't do that this time. And I'm proud of myself for that. And it's a journey, and I'm still progressing. The people in my world that I watch who are coaches and people that you likely look up to in this space are not perfect, and they're still progressing. And it's okay because we're human. And it's part of being on this incredible journey is feeling all of these big emotions and getting to experience what it means to be a human in this meat suit. And I love it. Even though yesterday was insane, and there's a part of me that feels like I wish I could take it back and wish I didn't cry my eyes out. You know what? There's something that came from that. And my husband and I are closer as a result. We shared some vulnerable things that we both need to work on. And we have a plan of action moving forward to not let it happen again or not happen so severely. So just allow yourself compassion, allow yourself grace as you navigate all of the things that are needed to be navigated on this journey of life, and give yourself that grace, because trying to force yourself into change when your body doesn't feel right, not doing the nervous system practices, not keeping up with your self-care rituals, not going to work long term. You've got to create a lifestyle out of this. Otherwise, you may end up staying stuck, and that's not what I want for you. I love you so much. Thank you for hanging out with me in today's episode, and I can't wait. Bye, everyone. Soul Sister, thank you so much for tuning in to this entire episode today. If you enjoyed this episode, would you do me a favor and leave a quick review? This allows me to reach more people, and if you found value, I know others in your life will too. Also, be sure to share this episode on social media along with your biggest takeaways so I know what resonates most with you and I can keep the good stuff coming. And if you're looking to dive into a deeper connection than this podcast will allow, consider checking out my Rise to Riches experience in the show notes below. I would love to hear how these messages have helped you take one step closer to living your soul-powered life and becoming the wildly wealthy woman. Sis, let's continue to rise together. I'll see you next time. Bye.